The new year is always a reminder of goals achieved, but also dreams postponed. Don't waste another 365 days before starting your dream business. Do it now with the help of Shopify. Shopify has helped millions of entrepreneurs, from household names like Skims and Allbirds to first-time business owners just getting started. With Shopify, you'll have everything you need to sell online and in person. Their built-in AI tools write product descriptions and headlines and help you edit product photos. Marketing is built in too. Create email and social campaigns that reach customers wherever they scroll. As you grow, Shopify grows with you. Handle more orders, expand to new markets, and do it all from the same dashboard. In 2026, stop waiting and start selling with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/income. Go to shopify.com/income. That's shopify.com/income. Hear your first this new year with Shopify by your side.
Hello, I'm Diane Morgan. If you know who I am, you know who I am. If you don't, who cares? I'm here to explain Italian Time, a holiday phenomenon where Italians throw away their clocks and gather for eternity with San Pellegrino. I've been at this party so long that I've eaten 5 courses, hugged someone's grandma twice, and been offered a job in the family restaurant. So this holiday season, make sure to bring enough San Pellegrino to last you through the meal, the after meal, and the entire goodbye ritual. San Pellegrino, holiday on Italian Time.
This content may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion advised.
From Killer Podcasts, true tales of the occult, otherworldly encounters, unexplainable events. This is Disturbed True Paranormal. In our first story, a spirit haunts a home, and it has a message, narrated by Camila Piñero from Disturbed listener Solara.
To begin this story, I have to explain a little about my boyfriend's background. Since he was a child, he's been unusually open and sensitive to supernatural things. His grandmother lived in a small town in Mexico, and as he puts it, she was a witch. They shared a strong bond, and I truly believe part of her gift was passed down to him. He has seen things, dead relatives, shadows, ghosts, entities, however you want to name them. And because these experiences started when he was so young, his parents eventually noticed. He was constantly scared, always talking about someone or something no one else could see. It got so bad that his parents took him to a therapist and even brought a priest to bless him and their home. As for me, I was never afraid of the dark. I loved ghost stories. I was always the cousin who brought up creepy topics during sleepovers, always secretly wishing something paranormal would happen to me one day. It actually did when I was in 7th grade, but that's a story for another time. This story is about my boyfriend. Let's call him Manuel. And me. We started dating in 2022 after being close friends for months, so we were comfortable sharing everything with each other. I already knew about his experiences, and honestly, I found them fascinating. I told him how I often felt strange in certain places, or how sometimes I sensed something behind me or caught something in the corner of my eye. He explained that when that happens, it's usually your 6th sense reacting. Most people ignore it and rationalize it, which is good, he said, because fear attracts things. I told him that ever since I moved into my current apartment, I'd felt a heavy, draining energy there. Not like someone was murdered, but more like whoever lived there before left behind something toxic. I've always been empathetic, and growing up in an emotionally toxic environment taught me how to recognize that shift in energy. So I did what I felt was right. I burned sage, burned incense, bought plants, and made the space my own. And the heaviness faded for a while, but it always came back. There was one corner of my room behind my bedroom door that I always caught myself staring at before falling asleep. It was pitch dark when I turned off the lights. And even though I can't sleep with any light on, I always had the nagging feeling that something stood there, watching me. Sometimes I turned my back to it, but only when I was too tired to overthink it. Whenever the heaviness returned, I saged again and felt safe, until I met Manuel. Manuel is the type of person who will never tell you if he sees something in your house. He believes acknowledging something gives it power, makes it want to stay. So for a long time, I didn't know he had seen anything. One night, I mentioned that I often felt someone watching me while I slept, and that the feeling had become stronger since he started coming over more. Saging wasn't helping anymore. He looked at me and quietly said, "I know. I felt it too. Something here doesn't want me around." I froze. He said it so casually, like it was nothing. He explained that he didn't feel the entity was dangerous, just jealous, like it didn't want another man in the apartment. Suddenly, I realized and remembered that the heavy feeling always came back when I invited men over. I had lived alone for years, so I'd had guests over occasionally before settling down with Manuel. It all clicked. He finally admitted that he had seen it, standing in the dark corner behind my door, a detail I had never mentioned to him before. Weeks passed. We'd adjusted to the feeling of being watched. It became part of the room. Until one night. We went out with two of my friends. They came into my apartment afterward, but only stayed for 5 minutes to use the bathroom. When they left, Manuel and I changed into pajamas and got ready for bed. We were brushing our teeth together in the bathroom. My bathroom mirror faces the doorway, and from it, you can see the entrance to my room. My desk, my bed, except for that corner. We were laughing, talking about our night. Then, mid-laugh, toothbrush still in hand, I looked up at the mirror, and I saw it. The entity that watched me sleep. The heavy presence I'd felt since I'd moved in. The thing Manuel avoided telling me about. It stood in the doorway of my room, tall and see-through, like a shadow stretched out. Its arms were long, too long, with sharp fingers that almost scraped the floor. It was so tall, it nearly touched the ceiling, and it was staring directly at us. I whipped around to look toward the doorframe, and it was gone. But I had seen it, clearer than ever. Behind me, Manuel whispered in a low, shaky voice, "You saw it too?" I dropped to the floor, toothpaste still in my mouth, toothbrush in hand. I fell to my knees and started crying. It wasn't just what I saw. It was knowing he had been seeing that same thing since he met me. That night, we barely slept. We both stared at that dark corner behind my door, waiting for something to move. A few nights later, I had a vivid, terrifying nightmare. I was in my bedroom, talking to my older sister. We were lying on my bed, laughing, but little by little, she started changing. She became smaller, turning into a girl around 16 with long black hair. But in the dream, I still saw her as my sister. She kept saying, "I'm scared. I'm so scared." And I kept asking, "Of what? What's wrong?" Finally, she whispered, "Let me show you." She stood up, facing me with her back towards the dark corner, the same corner where the entity always stood. Still facing me, she slowly moved her arm, then turned her body, and the entity began forming behind her. At that moment, I became aware that I was dreaming. I tried to wake up, but couldn't move. I screamed inside my head. I twisted, pushed, and tried to force my eyes open, and nothing was working. Then I felt as if something was stabbing my left ribcage over and over, fast and hard. Something was trying to keep me in the dream. Somehow I managed to wake myself up. I shook Manuel until he woke up too, crying uncontrollably. He held me, but he kept staring at the doorway, sweating, terrified. I didn't want to ask what he was seeing. I was too scared to hear the answer. That night, we slept with the lights on. The next day, we drove to his mother's house an hour away. We tried to pretend everything was normal, but late that night, surrounded by his family talking and laughing, I asked him quietly, "What did you see last night?" He didn't look at me. He looked away and whispered, "I saw a girl standing in the middle of your room." I broke down right there in the kitchen. I asked him through tears, "Did she have black hair?" He looked at me sharply. "Yes, how did you know?" "I saw her in my dream." We stared at each other, terrified. This wasn't a coincidence. He saw her fully awake. I saw her in my dream, and she was scared of the same thing I was. After that night, I trusted my instincts. He told me, "All those times you felt something, sensed something, when the room got cold, that was real. You feel things. Maybe not as strongly as I do, but you do." I moved out of that apartment a few months later for financial reasons, and thankfully, nothing that powerful has happened again. I still ask him sometimes, "Do you see anything? Do you feel anything?" Most of the time he says no, so I won't be scared. But if something strong enough shows up, he'll tell me the next day. We moved in together this April, and our new apartment feels peaceful. I take care of the energy there, sage, cleaning, keeping things light. That entity never felt dangerous, but it was always there, always watching. And that night, the night it finally showed itself to me, changed everything. It taught me to trust my gut, to pay attention to the things people ignore. Because sometimes, ignoring something doesn't make it go away. Sometimes, it waits.
Next, strange occurrences haunt a dorm room. Narrated by Lizz Skerrett from Disturbed listener Aaron.
This story takes place in my sophomore year dorm at Gettysburg College, located in the notoriously haunted town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This was during COVID, so while I normally would have had a roommate, I had a room to myself due to COVID regulations imposed by the school. Also, the room I was in had a direct view of Stevens Hall, which is the location of the well-known Little Blue Boy story. When I had initially moved into this room, as I unpacked my luggage, I found these small pink sticky notes hidden in stuff by my mom, with sweet notes like, "Love you, miss you, and study hard." As I unpacked, I collected them and put them in a stack on the small bookshelf drilled into the wall above my bed, and I quickly forgot about them. Several weeks later, I come home from class one evening and notice that one of the pink sticky notes is placed dead center on my pillow. A chill ran up my spine as I tried to convince myself that somehow a weird gust of wind or a breeze had knocked it off the shelf and it had just happened to land so centered. But it definitely rattled me. I put the sticky note back and tried to forget about it. The following day, I come home from class again. This time, a sticky note was stuck to the lid of my laptop, which was on my desk that was at the foot of my bed. This was a good 10 feet away from the bookshelf. Immediately, I thought someone was messing with me, but I was the only one with a key to the room other than the school's copy. I asked all my friends if they somehow had gotten in and were messing with me, but they all responded with a resounding no.
In fact, they were just as confused as I was about the situation. I tried to forget about it once again. The next day, I came home from class and immediately froze when I opened the door. For context, one entire wall of this room had built-in closets, cabinets, and a vanity with a mirror. The sticky note saying "Miss You" was stuck dead center in the middle of the mirror. I immediately turned around and left, not coming back until I'd gaslit myself into believing it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Something or someone had been in that room. Since then, I've rattled my brain for explanations, and there's only two possible answers. First, my room was super haunted, and while the spirit seemed rather friendly and harmless, it was still very scary for a 20-year-old girl. Second, some creep with a copy of the room key was going into my private space while I was away. Both are terrifying, though I'd almost rather it was something paranormal. I still think about this often, even though it all happened over 5 years ago. I wonder if the next residents of that room experienced something similar.
Finally, something lurks in the dark corners. Something haunted by its past. Narrated by Koop Kooper from disturbed listener Gary. If you have a story you'd like to share, send us an email at mystory@disturbedpodcast.com.
Right after high school, I was looking for part-time work, and through a friend, got a 6-month job at an old psychiatric hospital. My new job was to transfer decades-old medical files and photos from stacks of musty cardboard boxes into a digital system. I had to sign paperwork promising I wouldn't talk about anything I saw because, well, there was a lot of dirt. Celebrities, politicians, even people I knew. All their information was there. Everything about their psychiatric problems and even some disturbing photographs. The hospital was an old stone building from the early 20th century. They set me up in the basement, which felt like catacombs. A long, creaky stairwell, flickering lights, and rows of boxes piled high. I bought a radio, sat at a small desk, and worked alone all day. Pretty good pay, but an eerie setting. After a while, the dark corners of the basement started playing tricks. The first time it happened was a couple of weeks in. I was doing my work in silence when a harsh noise emanated from across the room. It sounded like an iron chain rattling, but there was no obvious source of the sound. It faded as quickly as it came, and I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination. A few weeks later, I was reading a particularly disturbing file about a patient with severe psychological trauma. Voices, visions, outbursts. Their photos showed them giving a wild, deranged look. As I was inputting the information, my typing was interrupted by another noise. I slowly noticed soft breathing coming from the dark corner across the room. Then a voice. I called out, "Anyone there?" No response. I turned back to my keyboard, but before I could press a button, I heard a voice. "Help me." The hair on my neck stood up. I was terrified and immediately contacted my supervisor at the hospital. They laughed it off, saying the basement and the nature of the files can make anyone's mind play tricks. I kept working. A few days later, I was working during a huge storm and the power went out. I sat in total darkness with only the dim glow of the computer. Over the thunder, I heard something moving toward me from that same corner. The chain sound, the heavy breathing and the faint, "Help me," all returned at once. Then a clack. A bottle fell from the shelf and spun on the floor, seemingly knocked by whatever was in that room with me. As I stared at the spinning bottle, shaking under the desk, the lights flickered on, and the sound disappeared. I looked around, and no one else was there. I booked it upstairs and tracked down my supervisor again. He insisted it was stress and isolation and basically told me that if I couldn't handle it, he'd fire me. So I sucked it up. I heard some more strange noises in the following months, but I pushed through. Eventually, led by both fear and curiosity, I asked my supervisor if anything had happened in that basement. He told me he didn't know for sure, but there were some pretty credible stories passed through the years. Rumor was that the basement had been used for certain treatments that would be frowned upon today. What exactly happened is unclear. Maybe it was testing experiments or even things we might describe as torture, but what we know for sure is that there were patients kept down there back in the day. A few weeks before the end of the job, I was down there late in the afternoon when a 5-foot-tall stack of non-record boxes suddenly collapsed. I assumed the boxes had weakened from mold and mice, and I walked over to push everything aside. When I did, the lights flickered, and while I was bent over, something forcefully shoved me from behind, knocking me to my hands and knees. I spun around, fearing the worst, but the room was empty. I went back to my desk and, after a moment, heard some guttural breathing coming from that corner again. Hearing things was one thing, but being physically pushed was another. I have no explanation for it. Whatever was down in that basement didn't want me in there.
Want more Disturbed? Check out our Patreon for member-exclusive content, early merch access, and other cool perks. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed, a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more paranormal and true crime shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Follow our social channels at Disturbed Podcast on Instagram or Disturbed_pod on Twitter. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and reviewing on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at disturbedpodcast.com. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Our producer is Declan Roars. Audio engineering by Nathan Corson, Will Pritz, and Sean Rule Hoffman. Executive producer Bridget Coyne. Until next time, stay safe out there.